Imagine the mist lifting off the cold, choppy waters of the North Atlantic, revealing the dragon-headed prows of Viking longships, their sails billowing as they approach an unknown land. It's the year AD 1000, and these seafaring Norsemen are on the cusp of a historic encounter. This is no mere raid or trading expedition, it's an intersection of worlds. Lying in wait on the shores of what would later be called Newfoundland are the indigenous peoples of America, communities with millennia-old traditions, complex social structures, and an understanding of the land that these newcomers could not fathom. Before Columbus, before the age of exploration that would put a European stamp on history, there were the Vikings. Warriors and explorers whose very name evokes tales of courage, conquest, and at times, brutality. And yet their interaction with the Native Americans is a narrative that remains conspicuously missing from our mainstream historical accounts. Why has this fateful meeting been reduced to mere whispers among scholars and the stuff of legend? What transpired between these two disparate civilizations that has remained so unexamined? Today we're peeling back the layers of time to uncover this lost chapter in the annals of human encounters. The moment when Vikings crossed paths with Native Americans. Buckle up as we challenge long-standing myths and venture beyond the margins of traditional history books. Prepare to question what you thought you knew and rewrite the story of the New World. The hidden saga of Leif Erikson and North America's first European visitors. It's the turn of the millennia, the year 1000 AD. Imagine the icy seas, the gusts of cold wind, the perilous journey. Led by Leif Erikson, son of Eric the Red, a band of intrepid Norsemen ventured far from their homeland, seeking uncharted territories. As the Norse sails touched the horizon, a land emerged, a realm untouched by European feet. They called it Vinland, named for the abundant wild grapes they found. And while this might sound like a tale spun from the looms of Viking bards, the evidence lies buried in the soils of longships. Nestled in the heart of modern-day Newfoundland, Canada, this site stands as a silent witness to the Norse saga. A monumental discovery. It's the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America, bearing tangible relics of an age where the boundaries of the known world were being redrawn. Voyage of the Norse. So, one might wonder, how did these Vikings, renowned for their legendary explorations and conquests, manage to traverse the treacherous Atlantic and stumble upon a land untouched by European feet? The heart of a Viking resided in their ship. These majestic longships, symbols of unmatched power, were feats of incredible craftsmanship. Carved from the hardy oak of their native lands, these vessels were designed for endurance. With a shallow draft, they could easily conquer the violent waves of the open sea and yet gracefully navigate the tranquil waters of meandering rivers. Navigating the vast, uncharted ocean was no small feat. The Norse were not merely warriors, but astute observers of nature. The night sky with its shimmering constellations guided them. They watched the flight patterns of birds seeking land. The majestic dance of whales in the deep blue hinted at the direction of their journey. But among these natural tools, the sun compass stood paramount. A marvel of its time, it harnessed the power of the sun, casting shadows to reveal their path. Riding on their expertise and with nature as their ally, they ventured west. The quest brought them to the rugged coasts of what we now identify as Newfoundland in Canada. Here, nestled amongst its green expanses and rocky shores, lies the undeniable evidence of their journey. longships. A settlement that witnessed the merging of two worlds. Two worlds collide. As the sun bathed the vast landscape in its golden hue, the true essence of this new world emerged. Stretching beyond the Viking settlements, there were vibrant communities, alive with color, culture, and the hum of everyday life. These were the Native Americans. Picture this, the aroma of cooking fires wafting through the air, children laughing as they play games, hunters returning from their expeditions, and elders sharing tales of their ancestors around communal fires. These were the people who had called this land home for generations. A people with a deep connection to every tree, every river, and every mountain. To the Vikings, these inhabitants were unfamiliar, distinct from any they had encountered before. In their sagas and tales, they would come to refer to these indigenous tribes as Skraelings. The dance of two civilizations. The Vikings, with their battle-hardened demeanor and dragon-headed ships, began their explorations beyond the icy edges of Norsemen. What they found wasn't empty wilderness, it was a realm alive with spirits, rituals, and the indomitable Skraelings. From the mystic pages of the Norse sagas, tales emerged of these first electrifying encounters. At a distance, Viking scouts, their breath caught in their throats, watched the Skraelings. They saw them mastering the waters with sleek canoes, a stark contrast to their own imposing longships. The Skraelings' rituals, a mesmerizing dance of color and sound, pulled at the very soul, beckoning even the most seasoned Viking warrior into its trance. There's a legendary account of a Viking, the audacious Thorfinn Karlsefni, daring to bridge these two worlds. Picture this: a bustling marketplace where Norse cheeses are traded for exotic furs, where a Skraeling's curious fingers trace the cold Norse iron for the very first time, and where Viking eyes widen in awe at the sight of intricately crafted indigenous pottery. But amidst this symphony of exchanges, not everything was as it seemed. Every gesture, every traded item carried with it a weight of unspoken intentions and silent judgments. Both sides, while entranced by the novelty of the other, were also acutely aware of their differences. It was a dance of intrigue and caution, where trust could be as fleeting as a shadow. But, as with every breathtaking story of exploration and discovery, there's always a twist: the precipice of conflict. As the seasons shifted and the early novelty of their interactions began to wane, the year 1004 AD witnessed a subtle change in the wind. Two civilizations, once bound by curiosity, found themselves on the precipice of conflict. The land, which had been a peaceful tapestry of mutual discovery, soon bore witness to the first ripples of discord. Tales whispered in the Viking camp spoke of mysterious disappearances of their kin. At the same time, indigenous stories recounted unsettling encroachments by the Norse into their sacred spaces. Thorfinn Karlsefni, the very Viking who had once fostered trade, now found himself mediating rising suspicions. Norse legends speak of a pivotal moment where a bull belonging to the Vikings, having escaped from its enclosure, caused mayhem within a Skraeling camp. This seemingly insignificant event was a spark in the dried tinder of mistrust. The grapevines of Norsemen murmured with stories of an indigenous trader being slain over a Norse iron tool, a valuable commodity that had once symbolized their peaceful barter. Tensions escalated. No longer were these lands filled with the harmonious chatters of trade, they echoed with war cries and the clanging of weapons. By 1006 AD, skirmishes broke out like wildfires across the landscape. One notable confrontation, recorded both in Norse sagas and passed down in indigenous oral traditions, took place near a body of water. Norsemen equipped with their iconic swords and shields faced down the Skraelings, who wielded their bows, slings, and clubs with deadly precision. Mystical tales recount a moment during this skirmish when an indigenous shaman, with a wave of his hand, supposedly summoned a fog, obscuring the battlefield. The Norse, unaccustomed to such tactics and perhaps fearing sorcery, found themselves retreating. Mystical visions and weighty decisions. Amidst the backdrop of strife and confrontation, the turning of another season around 1008 AD brought a wave of introspection for the Vikings. The rich soils and tantalizing tales of Vinland that had once lured them were now tainted with the blood and memories of battle. Legend holds that during one particularly cold evening, a group of Viking leaders, including Thorfinn Karlsefni, gathered in the dim light of a communal longhouse at Norsemen. Their discussions echoed with a blend of nostalgia for their homeland and concern for their people's well-being in this increasingly hostile environment. There's a Norse saga that speaks of a prophetic dream one Viking had. He saw a vision of the mighty god Odin, beckoning them to return to their homeland, suggesting perhaps that North America was not their destined place. Whether driven by divine visions or the pragmatic reality of their situation, the sentiment growing among the Norse was the same. It was time to set sail once more. Another tale tells of an indigenous chief who, wanting to end the bloodshed, sent an emissary with a gift, a single arrow wrapped in leaves of peace. While its symbolism was clear, for the Vikings, it wasn't just about the skirmishes. The weight of longing for their homeland and the challenges of establishing a permanent foothold in this new, unpredictable land were taking a toll. By 1010 AD, with their longships anchored and sails catching the wind, the the Vikings began their retreat from the shores of Newfoundland. As they departed, it's said that some indigenous tribes watched from the shadows of the forests, not in celebration, but with a complex mix of relief and reflection. Longships, once a bustling symbol of Norse exploration, stood silent, its huts and forges bearing witness to a chapter where two worlds had met, clashed, and ultimately parted ways. The North American continent would remain untouched by Europeans for another 500 years, until the sails of Columbus appeared on the horizon. But the legacy of the Vikings' brief sojourn remained, echoing in tales told around fires in both the snow-covered lands of Scandinavia and the sacred indigenous spaces of North America. The Vikings versus Columbus. Unlike later European arrivals, the Vikings didn't stay long and established only temporary settlements. The Vikings' presence was fleeting. Their impact on native populations was minimal compared to what would come centuries later. Fast forward to the late 15th century. Columbus and later the Spanish and English made their marks on the New World. But which discovery of America had worse consequences for the natives? It's sort of like comparing a small fire to a forest blaze. The Viking encounter was limited, whereas post-Columbus diseases, land grabs, and armed conflicts devastated native populations. Smallpox, flu, and other diseases reduced indigenous populations by up to 90% in some areas. Their cultures, traditions, and civilizations were forever altered. While the Vikings were an intriguing chapter, the larger European colonization left an indelible scar. Yet we persist, keeping our histories and cultures alive. With the Vikings gone, the indigenous tribes returned to their way of life, their encounter with the Norse becoming a part of their oral histories. Modern discoveries validate ancient sagas of Vikings and Native Americans. For centuries, the tales of the Viking voyage to North America and their encounters with the Skraelings existed primarily within the aged pages of Norse sagas and the oral traditions of indigenous tribes. Many deemed them mere legends, captivating stories devoid of concrete proof. But as time marched forward, the tides of discovery began to shift, revealing traces of a past that connected continents. Fast forward to the 1960s, a groundbreaking discovery would send shockwaves throughout the academic and historical communities. Helge Ingstad, a Norwegian explorer, and his archaeologist wife, Anne Stein Ingstad, following the hints and whispers of these ancient sagas, stumbled upon a remarkable site at Longships in Newfoundland. What lay before them wasn't just any settlement. Dated to around the early 11th century, the remains showcased timber-framed turf buildings, a signature architectural style of the Norse. But the relics didn't stop there. Among the unearthed artifacts, there were iron boat rivets and a bronze fastening pin, items that distinctly belonged to the Viking world. More intriguingly, there were remnants of worked wood, evidence of Norse ship repair, further solidifying the idea of this being a strategic outpost for seafarers. And then, another groundbreaking find in the 21st century. Evidence of Viking presence was unearthed further south. In 2016, satellite imagery and subsequent excavations at Point Rosée, also in Newfoundland, hinted at possible Norse activity, suggesting a more expansive exploration than previously believed. But what about the connection with Native Americans? Within these very sites, archaeologists found butternut seeds, a tree not native to Newfoundland, but found further south. This suggests the Vikings had ventured into territories where they likely had encounters, perhaps even trade, with indigenous populations. Furthermore, in Greenlandic Norse sites, researchers discovered artifacts like indigenous-style stone tools, and even yarn that bore a striking resemblance to Native American techniques. This suggests not just a singular contact, but possibly prolonged interactions. This is Pastflix, and we'll see you next time.